It's happening. Adults across the country can buy cannabis. People have a lot of questions, so I invited some friends over to talk about it. Joining me today is Ashley Athill, a cannabis educator.
Allowing it to be in its most natural state is the best way for me.
David Hyde, a cannabis security advisor.
Even in the most up-to-date greenhouses growing cannabis, there are fairly elaborate controls in that greenhouse.
And Matt Mernagh, cannabis activist and author.
And drones. I hear drones are just going to swoop right in and take them.
I'm Chuck Rifici, and we're talking the biz. To date, all legal cannabis has only been grown indoors or in a greenhouse. But we grow so many things in the open air. Should we be doing so with cannabis? What do you think?
I think so. Absolutely. I mean, I just see no reason at all why you wouldn't do that. It's a crop. It's a crop like many other crops. Obviously, there are some things that are unique about it, but it has been grown historically outdoors in many regions of the world. Legally now, I think there are at least 4 US states where you're allowed to grow cannabis outdoors commercially. So I think so. I think what it comes down to is how is it secured, how is it protected, and what are the quality aspects that come into play with where you channel the cannabis. Is it going to be the same as the medical grade cannabis possibly? Or I think there are some questions to get into, but I think that it ought to be allowed to be grown outdoors, and it can be grown well and grown securely in Canada.
I agree. I love sun-grown cannabis. And so allowing it to be in its most natural state is the best way for me personally. But at the same time, there are some challenges, safety challenges that come up. So just exploring that topic a little bit more would definitely be interesting.
I think I'm less on the safety challenges and security. It's simply as we get to more normalization and people can just buy it, the theft goes away quite a bit, and I think that's why they've changed some of the security requirements, right? I think the challenge for the open air grower is going to be on testing and passing all those strict standards of testing. That's, to me, is your biggest hurdle. And drones. I hear drones are just going to swoop right in and take them. That's what I hear.
God, is that our future?
That's our future of just no. I mean, like that's I hear drones out of the Canadian Senate, and drones are going to take them.
Well, I'm sure law enforcement are going to use drones to look for illegal grows outside, but
they do. Yeah.
From an outdoor cultivation perspective, I mean, I would certainly think, would it not be just going into oil production or extraction of the compounds? I mean, can you, under Canada's very tight regulatory environment for very clean and safe product, can you grow that product outdoors?
I don't think you can. I really don't think you can grow for dried flower. In terms of extracting it, you should be close to be able to get the standards that you need. But I mean, outdoor dried flower, regarding the restrictions we have in terms of the final product, I think it's very challenging. I don't think you can do it, personally.
So maybe outdoor would be more efficiently used for hemp products, where people can extract that and possibly make fuels and whatnot. That would be maybe an option just for outdoor growers.
When you look at the outdoor growing and the idea that what you get out the other end, and when it's extracted, you still are going to get something that has, properties of, it's cannabis, it's the properties of it, and there still will be uses it can be put to, and whether that would be in some, for recreational purposes, and other things that aren't as critical in terms of the sheer quality and that, getting the medical kind of piece right. I do think, and there are, as I said, US states that are doing that now, where the cannabis that's grown outdoors is channeled into the recreational market, and it's done so quite successfully, and there's testing regimes, but there are things to overcome. There are things like rogue plants, there are things like, having the cannabis growing near the hemp. We have cross-pollination concerns and things that can obviously negate. So there are things that and unique kind of pest and animal considerations, I think, in an outdoor grow.
I mean, I want to touch on the point because going back 3 or 4 years when the first regulations came out for growing cannabis federally with licensed producers, outdoor growing was not included, and they did reference cross-pollination with hemp. I mean, Canada has a very large hemp market, a lot of hemp growers. I mean, how real of a concern is that for cross-pollination? I mean, because hemp is just really cannabis with a very low THC count, right? I mean, will our hemp become cannabis if we have outdoor growing?
God willing.
I mean, well, obviously, I mean, the sun-grown person who's growing bud is not the hemp plants going out there and cutting all their rogue males. But I mean, like pollen, my understanding, pollen can travel, a kilometer or two. And if that guy's got a hemp field 2 kilometers or a kilometer from your cannabis field, you may have problems. I mean, look at grow facilities now. The ACMPR licensed producer facilities having to have, a HEPA type filtration system before it even comes in, because they are located in farms, in farm country, right?
To some degree, right? We have greenhouses that are venting to open air, and with licensed producers, I mean, there is already an exposure to the elements, if you will. I mean, I guess does outdoor growing, does it introduce an additional risk compared to what we already have today from a pollination side?
I think it's just, I guess it's the ability to control. I mean, I think when any enclosed, even a greenhouse, while it is sun-grown and it's more open, it still is semi or it's enclosed. There's an enclosure and you can control that environment. And even in the most up-to-date greenhouses growing cannabis, there are fairly elaborate controls in that greenhouse in terms of moisture, humidity, in terms of controlling of air, filtration, whether the air is filtered inside or the air leaving is treated with some kind of an ozone or a misting that's going to take that smell away or something.
The other consideration is the growing season in Canada. Some of the places we're talking, like Southern California, has a dramatically longer season of growing. I mean, if you're a farmer here, your window of profitability of making your crop very small, you're exposed to the elements now. You're literally becoming a farmer more so than anybody else.
Yep.
And those are some serious considerations you would have to take before venturing down that route.
The security standpoint, I mean, how, there will be some security elements if we have outdoor growing, I assume. I mean, what do you think is appropriate for security for outdoor growing, or is there any security risk? Does the average Canadian have to be worried about it?
I think a electronic radius, fenced radius would be a good option for outdoor growing. Outside of that would be pretty hard to kind of manage.
I mean, in Washington State, for example, it is fencing, so they actually regulate that you have to have an 8-foot fence, and any gates in that fence are illuminated and have cameras, so there's a certain amount of cameras. They actually, I think your average outdoor grow, commercial outdoor grow in Washington State might have 20 or 30 cameras, even 40 cameras. And there are alarm systems you can get. Again though, this starts to add cost and you start to say, well, what are we protecting and what are we protecting it from? And I hope that the government doesn't go to the extent of really putting a lot of security around these fields, essentially, when you don't really need that. I think to me, a fence or some kind of a barrier to keep wildlife out to a degree is going to be a nice security feature. But I think it's the building where the processing may take place that is much more of a likely concentration of security.
Some sort of like solid rumor in the town that you're growing in that says it's the security systems in place that's not, that will vaporize people on site. That usually will keep people out. But I mean, you're running into a field to steal plants, I don't think is that big a concern. And I think the other thing is when you have hey, we have to have all this security and there's 40 lights and there's a big fence and all this, and some guy on an ATV drives around and keeps it secure 24/7, that's going to draw attention to what's there.
Absolutely.
Versus most people, I've had guys do autoflowers in the months of late May to June, July period when they're not at all looking for plants. And he's like, I'm really just out in the field. He's like, oh yeah, see this field here? People drive by all the time. They don't know it's cannabis plants. And I was like, they looked at a field of cannabis plants. He's like, it's the wrong time of season for them to be looking for the harvest. And because it's just so normal, oh, that's gotta be legal, right?
With discretion and keeping things quiet is an element of security, right? It's important, right?
Rumor mongering helps too. Laser fencing that will vaporize. Drones and children.
We'll see if rumor mongering makes it into the regulations.
You must have a good rumor about your security system.
Guys, we're getting to the weeds a little bit in this conversation, so we'll stop it here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.